Here. In our last video we showed you what the allotment looked like at the beginning of the season when it was quite dormant and there wasn't much going on. Since then we've been working really hard at the allotment and we are reaping a lot of food. So we just want to take you on another tour to show you what it's looking like now. In the Bible it says you reap what you sow. And we really have been sowing and we're now reaping the benefits of our hard work. So what we're going to do is we've taken you from point A, which is when nothing is happening, to point B, and we're going to show you that today, and then we're going to backtrack a little bit to show you how we achieved all of this. So come along with me on this tour. In our first bed we have got strawberries. Strawberry season has now finished, but we had some really nice strawberries and we will insert a video so that you can see what we ate. Moving on, we have some beautiful blackberries. And we love this little blackberry bush because we prune it at the end of the season. We keep it quite small, but as you can see, it just bears so much. And there's just loads and loads of berries. Look at this. Absolutely beautiful. And we didn't even buy this bush. We actually took a piece from our friend's allotment plot and we put the roots in some water and allowed it to kind of grow, and then we planted it out, and look at this beautiful harvest. We also have more strawberries over here. They're a different type of strawberry, but they're really sweet and really nice. So here we have our raspberry bush. It grows abundantly every year. At the end of the season we tend to just cut it right back, but it always springs back up. It always gives a beautiful harvest. Look how big the raspberries are. They're absolutely gorgeous. You can also use the leaves to make raspberry leaf tea. And there's lots of health benefits, which I'm sure you can look up online to see that. One thing about raspberries is you find that they tend to grow in places that you don't necessarily plant them. So sometimes we find that raspberries pop up around our allotment where we haven't planted them, but they're easy enough to dig out and replant in the places that you need them to be. So just beyond the raspberry bush, it was one of our experiments where we started to grow spelt. We've never done this before, so we've tried our best to kind of grow spelt. You can see a few are springing up, but I think the flower has a long way to go yet. And case in point, look, raspberries just popping up in our spelt bed where we didn't put them. So we will be relocating them later. Moving on from this, we've done a bit of companion planting. So in this bed, we've got some spinach, which we had in here last year. We tried to kind of transplant them and move them out, but they've sprung up again, so that's absolutely fine. We've also got some dwarf beans as well. Look at that. So there's lots of dwarf beans in here. I did harvest some yesterday, but there's still some more to harvest. So that's really nice. we also have cucumbers in here as well. So I don't know if, Philip, if you can just come a bit closer, and you can see that we've got cucumbers that are springing up in there. And what we find is by having lots of food in the beds like this is called companion planting, we find that we don't have to weed as much, and things grow at different levels, so it really is a good thing to do. Moving on, we've got soya beans that are coming, and this is looking quite healthy. Our plants are looking quite good. The soya beans aren't quite ready yet, but the plants are looking healthy. So as long as we consistently water, I'm sure it will yield a really nice harvest. And over here to my left, we've got garlic. The garlic has dried right down and is now ready to harvest. But it is quite a slow yielding crop. So garlic typically goes in November, and we're now in July. So, you know, that's a lot of months of growing. But as you can see, if I just take this as an example, look at the size of our garlic. It is absolutely huge. So we've been really blessed this year to have lots and lots of garlic. And we'll do another video showing you how to grow garlic and how we harvest it as well. Moving on from the garlic, we're now going to go to the onions. So last year we really struggled to grow onions, but then we did a bit of research, and now that research has really paid off because we've got some really strong, healthy onions that are almost ready to harvest. So what we did was, when we were planting the bulbs of onions, we dug down and we put alfalfa beets in the soil, and then we put our onions in there, and we also put sheep's wool over the soil, the top of the soil, and we watered that in. And what that did was it provided lots of nitrogen to the soil, and we watered our onions quite consistently, which really helped to develop strong and healthy onions. So we can see that our onions are ready to harvest because they're now starting to bend. Another thing that we did was, as we could see the onions grow, we just pulled them slightly out of the soil and just kept watering them consistently. And as you can see, we've got some big, healthy onions that are almost ready to harvest. And in this bed, we have carrots, which are really starting to grow nicely. The soil here is quite stony, so what we did was we just dug out most of the soil and replaced it with nice fine compost. You can see how fine it is. And the carrots like to grow in that kind of environment, and it seems to be working really well. What we found was, last year when we tried to grow carrots in the stony soil, a lot of the carrots fought and didn't grow, you know, in a straight way. So again, we're constantly learning about how to grow food. So we're hoping that this year, because we've changed the soil, we'll have nice, long, healthy carrots that are not fought. Over here we have beetroot, which is really starting to come up. It's really starting to grow nicely. Last year in here we had some tomatoes, and they've decided to make an appearance as well, but we're just going to let them grow together as companions.
So in this bed we have a mixture of different plants, mostly nightshades, But what we have first and foremost are some peppers, and we grew these from seed and had them as plants last year, or most of them, and we just decided to bring them in over winter and to and to plant them out again. We also have some aubergine, and then most importantly, lots and lots of tomatoes. So we have some piccolo tomatoes, we've got plum tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, all kinds of tomatoes. And here we have some metal rods, and these are there because they say that when lightning strikes happen, it releases ions in the air, and that these metal rods will help to transmute these to the plants, which helps them grow. So I decided to put those there. And then here we have a mixture of different beans growing along. So we have some runner beans, as you can see, with these beautiful red flowers. And then we also have further along some pink, or you can call them red pole beans. And then down here, if you look at what we have across the ground, there are some butternut squash plants. I'm not sure how well they're going to do, but we planted them because they're a good way to make use of the space. So in our cold frame, we've planted some basil, and I think there's some rocket in here as well. And one of the things about this spot is that there are a lot of items that are around which the slugs and snails can hide in, so it can be a bit of a magnet. But what I decided to do was that I found out that they hate rosemary, and because we've got a rosemary bush which is like 4 feet long and probably about, I don't know, 5 feet high, we just decided to break off some branches, sprinkle some rosemary around, and so far I'm seeing that the plants are doing pretty well, because the slugs and snails, they really hate the sensation or the aroma of rosemary. And so I sprinkled them around here, and so far so good. The basil seems to be coming up quite nicely. In the case of the rocket tends to be ignored by the slugs anyway. So just a top tip, if you have a large rosemary bush, you could possibly protect your basil by putting some of this around it. Here we have our brassica bed, and specifically we have cabbage, we have some dinosaur kale, some curly kale, we also have some broccoli, some Brussels sprouts, and so everything here is underneath netting to protect against the birds. So in this bed we have a mixture of different types of potatoes, and the potatoes that we have are various types of white potato which are growing in these different mounds which we have here. And as you can see, the fact that they're dying off shows that they're pretty much ready to harvest, or getting near to ready to harvest. But because I'm not really ready for them, I'm just leaving them in the soil until I am ready for them. But here we have my wife's favourite, which are the sweet potatoes. And we started these off by growing some slips on a potato, a sweet potato which we just put in some water, and we planted the slips once the frost was done. And the sweet potatoes are something we started growing a few years back, and as you can see, they've gone absolutely crazy. Even though they just looked like little twigs at the beginning of the season, and even though they were looking quite miserable, they finally started to pick up. What we have as well with the sweet potatoes is that in order to just protect them a little bit, because the weather can be quite erratic once the frost has passed, I have them underneath this cloche, just to kind of help them get a little bit more, keep a bit more heat in, and it just kind of provides the right environment for them to grow. There are times where the weather is really good and you can just take them off completely, but this season I've just decided to leave them on, and they don't seem to be complaining. Now this is a bed that I'm really proud of. So it's our squash bed, and it's a mixture of pumpkins and also courgettes, and we also have in here corn growing. We've got some beans growing. There are a couple sunflowers, but the sunflowers are not looking great. However, what this is almost like a 3 sisters or a 4 sisters garden, where we mix the corn, the beans, the squash, and in some cases sunflower. So you can see that we have rows of corn, which is here. And what we have done as well to help us with the watering is that if you look inside here, we have these bottles which have been cut in half. So I water directly into there so that the water goes straight to the root, because we don't really want to have too many, or should I say too much water being watered on the actual leaves of these, as they get moldy very easily and get sick. And so in order to know where these bottles are, I've also placed this stick in here so that I'll always know where I need to direct my watering can. And as you can see, we have some massive yellow courgettes, and these are looking absolutely amazing. We've given away so many, but we're still getting more. And then we also have some regular courgettes as well. We've taken quite a few of them already, but we can see that there are some more coming as well. And there are also pumpkins hiding around in here. So you can see there's a very small one there. And then we can see that there's another little stripy one coming up. And then if we pull this back, we can see there's one there. And these guys need plenty of water. And what I've done for the bed is that I put down lots of newspaper and covered with some debris, like things like grass clippings, to keep the weeds down. And then there's also a couple squash plants in here. So this time around it seems as though we have managed to get 2 of them, which is pretty good. So this bed is well on its way and it's doing well. And this bed here is a mixture of beans. So we have Bortoli beans, and these beans are absolutely amazing. They're really good for stews. They're really hearty, and they are very filling when you cook with them as well, if you really like those bean stews, and the flavour is so good. So you can see that I've planted them, and I've made this this structure here so that they can have a support with the poles, and you can see that they're running quite nicely up the poles. And these were a bit slow at first, but they finally seem to be picking up. And then also I've sewed in some callaloo along the base. However, these have not come up yet, so fingers crossed, see whether we still get some. And then here we have something else which is quite interesting. We have got some broad beans, and as you can see, this is an example of broad bean, and these are really good. And a fun fact is that I think in Egypt they use the broad beans to make falafels, so anybody interested, that's something you can try. And then here we have our peas, and it's only recently I found the most appropriate way to protect the peas with this chicken wire, because before I had chicken wire only along one side, and it meant that the wood pigeons were getting in and they've pretty much hammered the pea plants. But we did sow a few more, so hopefully, lesson learned, we'll do better for next year, and we see how many we get with what's left of the season. The discs that we have here, we had these originally because they were supposed to create reflective glare to scare the birds off, but as you can see the weather has gotten to these, so we probably need to replace these soon. But that's a tip that can be made use of when we are trying to keep birds away from our food. And this bed, we have lots of spinach and Swiss chard growing in here, and they're doing pretty well. We have already harvested quite a lot, so this is like the second wave, and these can grow right up throughout the winter. And in here, this cloche, we have some rocket which has started off, and we were supposed to have some lettuce, however that hasn't really come through yet, because I've sowed a bunch before and have gone round to the second wave of planting, because the lettuce is quite resilient, so you don't need to worry too much about having a limited amount of the season to actually plant these. We're now on the second plot, and this is the plot which we got maybe about a year ago, and as you can see it's very different. But what we did last year is we planted this pear tree, and as you may have seen from the previous video as well, I mentioned a bit of information about that. But now you can see the fruits of our labour are coming through nicely. They're not quite ready, they're still a bit hard, so I'm just going to leave these a bit longer. I think there's maybe about 10 or 12 of these on here, but I'm very pleased with how these have come on. And as you can see, the other plot has got the pears on them as well, and this is why we planted this here, so that we could get some nice cross-pollination taking place. And with all these pears that are coming, even though the tree is very young, we can see that we've benefited from doing it that way. On this plot we can see that as we mentioned in the last video, my dad has grown lots and lots of pumpkins, and he's also grown potatoes, and he pretty much manages the majority of this plot. And the good thing as well is that along the borders we have some nice berries. So we have got some blackberries, the thornless variety. We have some tayberries as well, which we used all of those already. And the tayberries are crossed between the blackberry and the raspberry. And there's also some black currants and red currants growing along. And then also the thyme as well. Or should I say, not thyme, rosemary, which is growing along there. And then if we have a look at this side, we can see that the potatoes that he's sown are showing the signs that they're ready. Some of them are dying and falling over, which shows that they're doing their thing. And our apple tree as well, we managed to get flowers this year, but unfortunately no fruit. So we're just thinking that it would have used this year to gather strength, so that next year we should hopefully have some apples. So around it also we have plenty of red currants and also black currants as well, and they're really positioned nicely so that we get a good harvest, and we've already picked what we could get from these already. And as we continue on, you can see that what we said we were going to do has actually been done. We've planted out our wheat, and we've taken up about a quarter of the plot of wheat. And this is common wheat. We planted it at the same time as the spelt, but as you can see, the wheat has proved much more robust than the spelt did, and you can see that a good amount of it is starting to mature and starting to turn its nice brown color, which means that we should soon be able to harvest. And as you can see here, just a little lesson on pests as well. Or should I say, not pests, animals. We had a fox, I believe, dig out one of the sections, and we did lose quite a lot of wheat plants because of it, but there's not much you can do there. So yeah, we're quite pleased with how this has gone on with the wheat. So later on in the season, I'm going to have to come in with a sickle, and I'm going to have to thresh and winnow it, and then all of this, we should have a good amount of wheat berries so that we can make our bread products and things of that nature. I'm not sure how much this is going to yield in terms of kilo weight, but I wouldn't be surprised if we could get maybe 30 kilos out of this, which is perfect for us.
So that's enough about what we're growing this season. We want to know what you're growing. Post it in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share. Until next time, bye!